Welcome to the Select Board meeting of April 2nd, 2004. The first item on our agenda is the town manager's update. Mr. Town Manager.
Good evening, members of the board. Just want to run through a few things that are happening. One of the things, and they're just, I've been keeping kind of for lack of a better term, a journal of conversations and things like that, and complying information. So it's in order of where it got entered, not of importance necessarily. But this week we did have a conversation with the business community, or with members of the business community, to talk about how we can support local business in the here and now, and also plan for the bounce back, and what that could look like. So John Harris and Brandon Roberts from the finance department are quickly becoming subject matter experts in the SBA programs that are available for businesses, and will be available on Monday, starting Monday, to help assist local businesses, try and point them in the right direction for assistance. We do have a lot of it on our website. We did get feedback that it is commingled with a lot of other information related to COVID-19. That we did state emphatically that the information about health and social distancing are the top priority for information on our website. So Beth Williams, our tourism coordinator, is also, I think, a week or so away from launching a new tourism website for the town of Concord. And she will include a lot of this information on her website. So that'll probably be, that website will probably be more of the clearinghouse than the town's websites will have it, but we'll refer people who are specifically interested in business assistance to the tourism website. But like I said, Brandon and John are going to be our points of contact, just to manage expectations. It's not, their role won't be to fill out applications for businesses and submit them. Each business who wants to pursue these programs really need to do it on their own and make sure it's right. For example, I'd heard a comment from the governor that if you don't enter your business name exactly as it appears in W-2, then your online application won't be accepted by the federal government. So I just want to manage expectations there. So another issue that's come up this week was the issue of reporting cases on our town website. We had done it for a few days. Some concerns were identified, specifically concerns about privacy, concerns about community ostracization and bullying for people who figure out who the cases are. And then along with that, Mass Department of Public Health requested that towns not post case data locally. We also had concerns about the completeness of the information that we were getting, because it's based on testing that is not still widespread in the community. We feel that the counts that they significantly underrepresent what is likely to be a much higher number of cases that we just aren't aware of. So for those reasons, and because, like I said, of DPH's request, we had taken down the count. I welcome feedback. If you believe most of your constituents really want to see that information up there, we can start doing it. I would suggest updating it on a weekly basis. The data itself does not really play a large role in our planning, in our management of this crisis. The approach the town departments are taking is, in some way, everyone has COVID-19, and we have to have that level of caution. So that's one of the reasons why the data is, other than fire departments and other than the public safety agencies who are getting daily updates, I think it really isn't as meaningful from a public health planning standpoint. The data really is good at showing whether or not social distancing is working, whether or not we're experiencing the surge yet. but the data that shows that really isn't the Concord data. That is the county-wide and statewide data. That really is more illustrative for that purpose. So if the board feels like it belongs on the website, we can put it back up. If the board feels that it's doesn't really help all that much, then we don't have to. Towns are doing it either way. I mean, if you saw the story in the paper, I don't know if it's a 50-50 split, but it is some towns are leading to MDPH's wishes, others are reporting it.
All right.
My comment would be, I'm not sure whether it's a good idea or not, but every time I look at the statistics in Middlesex County, Middlesex and Suffolk well, Middlesex is nearly 20% of the state, and so is Suffolk. And so I wonder how much of that is here. But on the other hand, I'm not sure how I fall down on that. But I do notice that our county has a substantial number of cases that grow, 10, 20% daily.
Yeah, we have 7 cases right now.
Okay.
As of now. We have 7 confirmed cases.
Well, that's good to know, because in my crazy head, it's like, do we have 100 or 200 or, so 7 sounds.
To be candid, 7 sounds artificially low.
Yeah. Yes, I'm sure it is.
But we've been asked by the state not to post these local numbers.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of, like I said, we've been getting emails from residents that seem to want it. Like I said, I don't know. It doesn't do us a lot of good to have that publicly information. And honestly, it doesn't do us good. It's not full data for us in terms of strategy and planning that we plan and strategize at regardless of what the data says, because we're following the best practices. But if people are interested in, I guess my concern is we talked a lot about community anxiety. And saying that we have 7 cases, I don't know if that creates more anxiety or reduces anxiety in a way that it shouldn't reduce anxiety. And so that's why, because this is one of those things where I'm the new guy, your constituents better than I do. I would just say I'll do it either way. I'll either stay the course and try and explain to the community why we are acceding to DPH's wishes, or we'll just start posting it maybe on a weekly basis.
What other comments from the board?
Do the number of cases include residents only, or do they include like hospital workers or restaurant workers in town?
The data is all resident data. So like for example, DPH has a web-based platform that when they get reports of cases, they post them on a database that our Department of Health has access to. I'll also say that a few weeks ago we had a fairly large meeting with community stakeholders that Mike was present at. The net result of that was a daily check-in with some of those community stakeholder partners and our fire departments. That is really kind of I don't know if it was first of its kind, but now other communities are looking at that and saying, geez, we should be trying that. So we have been getting daily information from both DPH and from places in our community. So I feel better about the data than I did when we first started talking about this in terms of the completeness, but I know that, or I shouldn't say no, I am virtually certain that there are cases out there that we just don't know about. And I just don't want people to see 7 cases and be like, no big deal.
Yeah.
Because one of the things I'm going to move to after we get done talking about this is kind of a reminder to the community about social distancing, especially in our open spaces. I've gotten a lot of reports of people congregating in great numbers at parks and on trails and in conservation land. So I'll come back to that, but that's the type of thing that Susan Rask and I agreed with her, felt like our counts sent a different message than we were trying to send about the seriousness of this. So, and you know, so yeah, Jane, you're muted. You have to unmute.
So,
Jane or Linda, do either of you have comments?
no, this is Linda. I understand the dilemma you have at this point in terms of keeping the vigilance high enough for the general public. And at the same time, we're in a data-oriented community. And so that is comforting to people. So is there a way that you could put it up with a qualifiers that, as you're verbalizing right now?
Yeah,
And
we'll definitely do that. Qualify. I think I wouldn't feel right up without kind of giving some of the narrative that I just gave.
Exactly. That's what I meant.
Jane?
I was just going to reiterate the concern you led towards, which is that, the fear that a small number right now, first of all, that has probably very little to do with where we'll be 2 weeks from now, which all of the data is pointing towards, that we're heading into our big spike, not in it now. And that, one of the pieces of data that I don't have is, how much testing is actually even going on here. Because if the answer is, outside of perhaps our elder care facilities and, designated high risk populations, we probably aren't getting a lot of testing going on. So who knows how valid it is one way or the other. And the last thing we want is mid spike or as the spike heats up, a relaxation of social distancing measures. I think that, the hard part is that that the reporting stopped before we had a chance to talk about it publicly. And that's just that's an artifact of time and timing. So I don't want there to be a concern within Concord that we are withholding something or being secretive about information that is available in a lot of probably inaccurate patterns in social media. So we're sort of stuck now.
Yeah, I guess what I would say to that, Jane, is the reporting stopped when the state asked us to stop reporting.
Right. But again,
the idea that we're withholding information that was not only optional to provide, but was specifically we were receiving specific guidance. And I'll be candid, at the end of last week, I honestly thought the state was going to prohibit communities from posting locally because of where the guidance was going. And I think evidently enough municipal leaders got to the governor over the weekend where they kind of rolled back, but it was all heading towards, I think, like I said, a mandate. And it didn't materialize. And we said, well, it's going to be out of our hands soon. So we didn't really think much about it. But when the state asked us, we said, okay, that's fair. We have these concerns about the data and and possible risks to privacy and HIPAA and all that stuff. And then, oh, by the way, they're asking us not to do it. So it was a relatively easy choice. But I also understand community concern. I just want to, again, managing expectations. We'll put it back up. We will qualify the information, and we'll trust that Concordians will, take that data in the context in which it's given.
I think we should be following the advice we're being given by our public health officials. And if the Department of Public Health is asking us not to do it, for me, that's sufficient reason not to do it. And the citizens should understand that. So I don't know exactly what the path forward is here, but this is the time when we should be taking our lead from our public health and medical personnel. And if that's...
Well, a lot of other communities aren't doing that. A lot of our neighbors are posting. And, I think it's, like I said, I think my kind of play it down the middle approach would be we put data up.
Selectively decide not to social distance. I mean, to me, it's trying to take guidance and doing what our state officials, our local health officials are suggesting. I don't think we should selectively be decide which of these recommendations are, we don't need to pay attention to them. So I'm not in favor of posting the data.
Okay.
But if the majority of the board is, that's fine. But so you want to take a vote, Stephen?
I don't know if I'd have you vote on it because it wasn't posted on the agenda as an individual item. But I'll just say that we'll talk internally again. I don't think DPH will hold it against us or penalize us for posting it. I think we'll talk internally about a way to get the information up that can satisfy those who feel like they need to know. But at the same time, like I said, have it be meaningful and
Stephen,
and qualified.
Sorry, this is Linda. Stephen, I failed to ask you, how many comments and how much pressure have you gotten from residents on this?
A handful. I mean, it was, and honestly, I guess because it was in both in the Concord Journal and on Channel 5, I expected to get a lot more. But I think people reading those stories after they got through the headline and got to the bottom and saw, oh my God, this really is, they a lot of other communities are also taking this approach. They realize that it really is just a local decision. I think, as I explained in my note to you, the headline could either be, we're not sharing information, or we're not following DPH guidance. I mean, there's really a darned if you do, darned if you don't aspect to this. So, like I said, I think if we put information up and updated it weekly to just so people could check and see, because it really is only a comparative value. The value of the data is really, how do you compare from the time period before? And I think our caseload and really, as you pointed out, Jane, the rate of testing make daily updates somewhat insignificant. And so I think a weekly update, if all of a sudden we start spiking, we'll update it daily. We'll see how it goes.
Can I just ask a question?
Sure.
For clarity's purpose, is this something, is this supposed to be something the select board is weighing in on, or is this really a judgment of the town manager that that we're discussing because it's obviously come to public discussion?
I think it's the judgment of the town manager as the public information officer. I just wanted like I said, because this is a community, like a few things we've talked about, when I assess that it's really more related to the community's desires, personality, preferences, I really value your insight on that. So I think I'm clear on. We'll give it a try.
Has our own public health director or our emergency management director weighed in on this?
Yes. Public health director has, and when I say weighed in, discussed it with me. Mm-hmm. Yes, and our public information officer, and we all feel exactly the same way.
All right. Did you have more of your update, Stephen?
I do actually. I have kind of a long list. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
So one of the things that we're trying to do is we've also gotten some feedback from people who are BD attendees that we're not doing online things. As you know, we ended up closing BD and our childcare facility in accordance with the governor's order, and we ended up laying off the non-regular status employees so they could take advantage of the unemployment benefits, because we had no revenue coming in for either the childcare center or the BD center. We simply could not afford to keep everybody on the payroll because those positions were dependent on revenue. Now that we have a clearer sense that this is going to be a month of the status that we find ourselves in now, the rec team is working on now working on some community wellness things, online sessions and stuff like that. we have the Easter egg hunt at Hunt every year. That obviously had to be canceled, but we had already ordered the eggs. So the rec department is going to have, they'll be giving out bundles of Easter eggs that people can drive up to BD, don't even open your window, pop open your trunk, and they'll stick it in the back, safe social distancing, and then you can bring them home, let them sit for a week before you have to handle them again. And then you can have your own Easter egg at home. And this will happen on Sunday from 11 to 12:30 or from 11 until they run out. So hopefully people will have the opportunity to go. We don't want them to go to waste. And, some of them have candy in them, some have little toys in them. So we want to use them. And the rec team and specific Kate Hodges have developed, I think, some protocols for the program that will comply with the safe distancing, social distancing guidance, but also give people a little something positive to to look forward to at home while they're spending Easter at home. I have some information from Public Works as well. So the curbside trash and recycling collection is going to continue. We understand people normally the sticker, day one of the sticker year is April 1st. They will still continue. If you can't get out to get your stickers, Waste Management will continue to collect your curbside trash all the way through April. And that's, we are also in the process of developing a method for purchasing stickers and getting them delivered electronically, either purchasing it online and getting it mailed, or finding a way to do it all electronically so people don't have to go to a grocery store just solely for a trash and recycling stickers. And the other thing we're going to do, and this is something that we've gone back and forth quite a bit, but because of the weather is getting better, and for many people, myself included, working in the yard is a way to get exercise, kind of manage anxiety, and kind of feel good. And so we are going to open the composting site on Thursday next week. So Thursday the 9th on the 9th and 10th, it's going to be open from 8 to 2, and then 9 to 3 on Saturday. And people should go to the CPW website or call CPW if they have questions about that. The one thing I'll say is if people, and we also are developing a health and safety plan for our employees. So we're making sure that our employees are going to be safe while this is happening. But if 50 people show up at once and aren't social distancing appropriately, then we're going to close. Then we're going to have to close it again. Something that people really need to be mindful. If they decide they're going to bring yard waste to the composting facility next week, please observe the guidelines. Otherwise, we will have to close it. Like I said, this is one of those things where we're trying to discourage people from doing things other than stay at home, but we also recognize that this is kind of a unique service that we provide and gives people a unique opportunity to still be at home, but also do something productive. And like I said, almost like a wellness thing.
Stephen, this brings up a couple of related topics. One would be everybody's landscaping or lawn care group, and whether or not that is considered an essential service. And then just separate, I know there was some concern or some, that Carrie and her team were working out the additional billing associated with online payments. So if you're going to get to that, get to it when you're going to get to it. But this seemed like a conversation that had both of them.
Well, the governor just updated the essential business list, and they also sent out additional guidance about construction that is much more restrictive. And in fact, probably tomorrow, our building department will be promulgating new policies temporary policies for how to handle, for how building permits, when building permits will be issued and when inspections will take place and some of those requirements. Businesses have to have health and safety plans for COVID-19 as a part of their project. And if they're not following it, that they will get shut down. And I think landscapers are a little different. It was clear it was in the guidance, like most businesses that work, we'll call it remotely, but it's in the field. If you're doing social distancing, you can still do it. So landscaping was not an essential. Golf course landscaping is a business, but regular landscaping is not. And so landscapers are supposed to be practicing social distancing as they do their work. I'm sure there are some who are not. And so I would ask residents who have landscapers at their house, not only are those landscapers putting each other at risk, they may be putting you at risk if they are not practicing safe social distancing while they do their work. And if they aren't, I would advise that they are not in compliance with the governor's order. And in terms of online billing, I'm not sure which thing specifically you're referring to.
Well, if
Before
we're
we-
doing,
Before
sorry,
we
go
go to
on, Mike.
Jane, is somebody in town monitoring those stores that are essential and are open to ensure that they are taking necessary precautions to protect their employees and customers?
Well, not actively. I think if the police get a complaint or if they see something, they will say something. The enforcement, there really isn't an enforcement mechanism built into the order. I think the governor is just really relying on people's better judgment. And so the police, like I said, if they do see people congregating, they will say something. Those businesses, other than the ones on the list, should be closed. And that includes, and even if you can deliver, if you're a non-essential business, but you can do delivery, you're still not supposed to be open. And so it's, it's one of those things where people really need to just, I mean, the governor was on again today at a press conference, just trying to hammer home. I don't know if anybody saw it, but he was talking about a surge range of for active cases of around 50,000 to 150,000. And that's a big range. And to me, what gets you from 50 to 150 is people not taking it seriously enough and doing the social distancing.
Well,
As he articulated it this way, he said, if the virus can't jump from one person to another, it will cease to exist. And it's just that simple. And so any activity besides staying home has some inherent risk of increasing community spread.
My remarks were not so much aimed at businesses that shouldn't be open, but businesses that are in fact essential. Does the town have some responsibility for ensuring that its citizens are protected?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of that enforcement then would fall to the Board of Health. I will tell you that I don't think Susan's out doing inspections, but people should for themselves notify us if they observe businesses are not following the guidelines, and people shouldn't patronize those businesses and incur that risk. So if there's nothing more on that,
I
just want to make sure. So the Cambridge Turnpike work is going to continue as well. That's just to kind of, I just want to report on that because I wanted to remind everybody that there was a day not too long ago when, we were doing regular projects and normal town business, and hopefully very soon we will be doing all of that. I think that's about it for me. We are monitoring. Oh, I'm sorry. I also buried the lead for Public Works. I am pleased to announce that John Cathcart is the new director of Concord Public Works. He's filled in admirably and really has earned the job by virtue of his intelligence, his commitment, and his really stepping up in a really, I mean, being an acting director in the situation that we've now found ourselves in isn't easy. He's handled it really with aplomb. And so I'm pleased to make him a permanent part of the SMT.
Stephen, I interrupted you. I thought you were going to make some comment on electronic payments.
Yeah, I guess I wasn't sure if there was a specific type of, because I think we've had electronic payments for many things. That was pre-existing. We are working to see areas where we don't have electronic payment options. Can we create some? I did want to say one last note. I haven't seen any updates about if the legislature voted on any of the municipal bills, specifically related to town meeting, or dealing with the thing we're going to talk about later. But I do have a planned conversation with our delegation tomorrow afternoon, and so hopefully we'll get an update there. And if I do, I'll report back to the board. So, is there a specific question about the online payment?
Well, that had come up at the last meeting. A number of residents had contacted me about the third-party billing payment that was associated with taxes and other online payment.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a discussion that Carrie and her team were working on that. I was just asking for an update on that because I had continued queries.
Okay, it carries on is here, sort of.
I am here. We're not aware of any issues with any having trouble using the online payment.
It's not a trouble. It's the third-party billing. It's expensive in addition to whatever.
Oh, right. So we do work with a company, and the way the state law is right now, municipalities are not allowed to pay the service fees associated with online billing unless there is a budgetary appropriation for that. So we do have to pass on 100% of the service fees to anybody using the system, unlike what you would encounter if you went to a private business.
They can avoid those fees if instead of using a credit card, they simply use a bank
Yeah.
Yes.
routing system.
Mhm.
So it's easy to avoid the charge if they use that. Before I ask for questions for the manager, Stephen, on behalf of, I'm sure the whole board joins me, and I want to just thank you personally for all you've been doing to keep the town on track and informed. I know you've been very, very busy. And in addition to yourself and your staff and the finance department and town clerk's office, public works and natural resources and the light plan in particular, with people having broadband issues, and the police and fire departments, everybody's just done a spectacular job. And I really would hope you would extend our deep gratitude to your senior management staff and through them to the rest of the folks who are helping us stay on top of these things. Greatly appreciated.
Well, thank you for saying that, Mike. And it is it's a great team, and you're absolutely right about the senior management team, the middle management level, and then of course all of the people actually in the field. It's been really amazing to see people's. I think I said this every time. Town services are continuing. Even essential services are continuing almost smoothly as they were before. But a lot of other work is still being done by people. People are staying very busy. We are finding the work, allowing people to telework has been very effective. And then there are those who have demonstrated great commitment by being here, like Kerry and Kari, who are in the meeting here, by physically being in the office to make sure that things like mail get processed. It's there's a great story that we're going to tell about how well the organization really performed in this crisis, and in a lot of the ways that other communities are probably going to start copying some of the innovative approaches we've taken to managing the crisis specifically. So thank you for the feedback, and I do share it every time you generously give it.
Well, and I wanted to mention also our public information officer, keeping that website up to date and so that that information is available to all of our residents is really greatly appreciated. Other questions from the board for the town manager?
I have two, if I may.
Yes.
Stephen, I'm just wondering about if there are any other patterns of concerns we're getting from residences that are coming in numbers.
Not that I've seen. A lot of concerns about, like I said, people will send in notes about too many people on the trails or too many people at the parks. The issue of the posting of the data was kind of the hot one this week. And maybe people just don't know how to find me individually, but I haven't heard much from other department heads either.
Oh, that's a good sign.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I think I noted to the board in my report, my email report yesterday, Concord really is, the residents of Concord are also showing themselves to be extremely patient and really understanding of the situation and, doing their part to try and get through this as quickly and as safely as possible. And so, I don't want to say they've been leaving us alone, but they really have put things. I think most residents have kept things in perspective and understood what's really important for all of our attention in this time and what's not.
Okay.
I think,
My second question, sorry, Susan, you go ahead.
no, you go ahead, finish.
My second question is, are there any significant employee gaps at this point in terms of coverage, either because people have taken leave or?
No, actually, I think we have the opposite problem. I think, no people are working. And so when we come out of this, we're gonna have a lot of people who are gonna want to take some time off.
Okay.
And then we'll have coverage gaps, but no, not that I'm aware of. Only, like I said, we had to do the layoffs, for, the child care center and Beatty, just because we need them to come back and still be viable enterprises. And if we bankrupted them in this time, especially since, unemployment benefits were extended in a way to help manage the crisis, that's the only area. And as soon as we're back online, we hope all of those people will come back.
Okay, thank you.
Susan?
I just wanted to piggyback on what Stephen said. I think the balance between the community not being patient and not pushing for things is because you give us a lot of information and you keep us posted and you give us access to sources of information, so that those two things go together. So that it's just to echo the thanks to all of you for what you're doing.
Thanks. And I should have mentioned Erin Stevens. I think she just sent me a message here. Like I said, we understand how important it is to get information out. I've gotten good feedback on the all calls that we've done. There are towns that don't really like getting the phone calls. It seems like Concord has really appreciated that. I don't plan to do one tonight because I don't feel like we have enough big stuff to announce. But if the board says, geez, the community really needs to know about this, I can now do it remotely. I'm now set up to do it, so I can put out a call at any time.
Well, I think you're right that unless there's a substantial amount of new information, we'd probably hold off on our robocalls. Would be interesting to know sometime soon, have the number of enrollees in red code, code red, increased a lot, or?
They have gone up quite a bit since February. We're kicking around the idea of doing a postcard mailer to Concord houses that includes a reminder to sign up for Code Red. And if people are watching this meeting online, then they know how to sign up for Code Red by going to the town's website. But if you're watching on Channel 9 and you aren't that technologically proficient, just call the Long Meadow Police Department, Concord Police Department, and they can they can help sign you up that way as well.
Good. Other questions for the town manager?
I wanted to say that that last robocall that you did, Stephen, that you got a lot of great feedback on that last in particular. It was very well done, very professional. And I had a couple questions to follow up. One is following up from Linda's question about our staffing, and I've been wondering if I know we're down a few people in IT, so does every employee that wants to work remotely now have a setup? Do we have enough IT people to having done that?
Yeah, and as you know, Dave Wood has been in addition to being the general manager of the light plant, he's also been our acting IT director. And he and his team, we also have a vendor that we've had the vendor for years, and then we've also brought in some outside help. And that combination has done really an amazing job of very quickly getting they not only did they increase our VPN, the kind of teleworking licenses, we were able to repurpose a bunch of laptops. The library is closed, so they had 12 laptops that were going to be unused, so we repurposed those to help people work from home. They really have greatly enhanced our abilities to continue providing those services remotely. He also, in addition to just our employees, just before this hit, they upgraded our bandwidth for our broadband business, and we're upgrading some of our switch gear and making sure that for our customers, their ability to work from home is enhanced and uninterrupted as well.
Great. And my other follow-up, I think what Jane was trying to ask before, I'm not sure if I have this right, but I think, Stephen, you started to say something about with the third-party billing that people are looking for a way to do the trash barrels or trash stickers online. Is that right?
Yeah, and CPW is working on that, but as I reported, through April they can continue to put their barrels out with the old stickers. It's a tradition. Like, some communities provide a service in a very traditional way because that's the way people like to do it. So this is one of those things that we are going to try and update and make more electronic, so people don't have to necessarily go out for that. And actually, in my update, just very briefly, Terry, you had asked about Emerson Hospital.
Oh, yeah.
I can't really report on what Emerson Hospital is or isn't doing, but I will just tell you that our emergency operations staff is in regular contact. Like I said, Dr. Alan Woodward has been kind of a liaison, and so there's a lot of communication between the town and Emerson, and there are plans being developed. I just can't really comment on them now, but I just want the board to know that we are working closely with them. So when the surge hits, we're as ready as we can be to help them out as to the greatest extent possible.
Right. Thank you for remembering that. What I was wondering was if they asked for, any town parking lots or buildings or anything, whether any of that would need a select board vote, or you would pass in any way, or you could just go ahead and give permission to the hospital.
I think the town manager has responsibility for facilities under the charter.
Right.
And so I would certainly notify the board, but I'm confident that under the charter and the bylaws that I have the authority I need to do to take actions like that quickly.
Yes, I believe that's correct, but my hope would be, and I'm sure you would do this, that when there is a plan that looks like it's going to be executed, whether or not the select board has any voting authority, and I agree with you, we don't, I would really like for us to convene a select board meeting so you could report out to the town, so that there would be very current and complete information from you directly, and it doesn't get filtered and as it makes its way through the resident population.
Sure. No, I agree with that. And the only thing I'll on that same heading of managing actions, I'm sure there may be times where Emerson wants things reported or not, depending on their protocols or their operations. And so I would have to take some cues from them, but otherwise, we need to use these meetings as a pipeline for information to the community.
Right, exactly. Any more questions for the town manager? Seeing none, the next item on our agenda is a discussion and a vote to suspend the single-serve water bottle ban. Stephen, could you give us a background on this?
Yeah. So I'll be honest. A supermarket, a market in town had approached me about this a couple of weeks ago, asking if we could do this because they were having a hard time getting the larger size water bottles, and they do have customers that, for whatever reason, rely on bottled water. But so I had been considering this, but I wasn't. But the bylaw really only allows the town manager to, or the select board to suspend the bylaw in cases where there's an issue with water supply. After talking with Susan Rask, it's getting to be that time of year where our public, drinking fountains and water sources would normally start coming online. We are not going to be bringing those online during this crisis because we feel like that could be a transmission point because the virus does live on surfaces. So we are not going to bring those online, and so it would, people who have single serve bottles won't be able to fill them up there. And so I think it makes sense given that that restriction of water source that we would temporarily suspend the ban.
What could I ask what what Susan Rask's opinion is on doing this or not doing this, or the Board of Health?
Her opinion is that we should not be opening the drinking fountains.
No, about the water bottle ban, suspending the bottle ban. Or did you not comment on that specifically?
I don't remember. She did send an email about it. I don't remember if it was really an email exchange between her and Alan Cathcart because of the CPW are the ones who turn those systems on. And so I just got forwarded, their correspondence. And I don't remember if she commented on the bottle ban.
And my other question is, the vendor or the retailer who you spoke with, was it specifically the liter bottles they couldn't get, but they could get gallons or other sizes of, larger sizes of water, or was it bottled water in general?
It was the sizes, and they had specifically said that they were maybe going to have an issue with getting those sizes and asked if they could have the single serve size as an option.
Yeah. Thank
Other
you.
comments?
This is Jane, and I just have to object strongly. I have no evidence. Well, let's start with the fact that during the winter months we don't have public drinking water accessible, and yet people are outdoors actively using their own water bottles. We have an amazingly good water system, and COVID-19 is not transmitted through our public drinking water or our tap. And this seems to me to be an unnecessary jump that benefits, maybe a few, but actually rolls back a behavior change that I think Concord is well underway in. I completely appreciate the reason you don't want public water taps being touched with people's fingers, because that's a transmission point. However, anybody that's been shopping knows the level of required disinfecting that goes on with every single surface that comes into your home. Bringing a bunch of plastic water bottles into your home, disinfecting them so that then you can use them, versus taking a reusable bottle of your own that you know of and filling it up with the water at your own tap. I just don't see I'm not at all convinced that the need is there, or other than perhaps a retailer's interest. I would have to be convinced that this was a overwhelming public need in Concord to feel strongly about removing our ban.
Other comments?
I think we could come to a point where there is, especially during the surge, where there is a real public health need for this. But in the interim, it would be helpful to understand just how much this is affecting our business community, as opposed to some, specific.
I've been on 2 calls with the business community, and Stephen was on the last one with me a couple of days ago. That it never came up there, but I'm not sure that would have been the forum where we would have seen it. I would like to hear directly from our Director of Public Health what she thinks, if she thinks we should, and if this is the appropriate time. Have you heard from other retailers or just a single one?
No, just the one. And I think, looking at, like I said, people, the weather being warmer, people use it because normally there's a water source there and it's not going to be there. We thought we would give options. People can, people don't have to buy them. They can still use their they can still use their reusable water bottle at home, like you suggested, Jane. It just was the manager of the store that I talked to really, it was he made it out of concern for his customers. And I can't evaluate whether or not that he's doing it. I don't think it's about, selling more bottles of water or making money. He seemed pretty sincere that there was a genuine need that he had for his customers to be able to have access to bottled water. So I can, like I said, I think this is another of those ones where I think the bylaw allows the town manager to do it, but it was one of these things that I really wanted the board feedback. So I can hold off for now. I mean, I don't think there's a crisis out there yet. But if we were heading towards a situation where we did have a surge and it was more difficult for whatever reason for people to get access to water and they needed bottled water, I want to give stores a chance to prepare for that. But I think we can hold off for a little bit. And I will talk to Susan Rask and get her take on it.
I think it would be a good idea to hold off a little bit and see if we can gather a little bit more information. If it's just a one retailer and it's just a short-term problem, but if it becomes more significant, I'd like you to bring it back to us.
Yeah.
Sure.
That seemed like a reasonable way forward.
Yeah.
It does.
Right, thank you. The next item is property tax relief. I guess I'll tee this up. Pending before the legislature is a bill that would give the select board the authority to do one of two things. One, to waive all late fees and penalties for property tax payments. And the second, which is an or, not an and, or to delay the due date for property taxes from May 1st to June 1st. The legislation, the last time I checked anyway, the legislation had not passed, but I do think it will pass within some number of days. And I thought it would be a good idea if we had a discussion about this and our options so that when it passes, we can get it enacted quickly. And I did ask both our chief financial officer and the town assessor to join us this evening. And so perhaps I could turn first to the assessor for his opinion on this. Lane?
Yeah, so I've been tracking that bill as well. And I think Carrie's would have more input on waiving the interest or extending the due date. The part that more concerns assessing is the extension of a filing period for exemptions and deferrals. That's normally April 1st, and the bill also allows you to extend that. I think that's a great idea if we have some people that may be able to take advantage of that. However, the rules of that are income and expenses as of July 1st of 2019. So anything that they are experiencing right now would not be considered in the application. So I think we've pretty much covered everybody who normally gets it, have already filed and it's already been processed. You can certainly extend it, but I don't anticipate there would be a lot of more applications come in because of that.
Carrie? Oh, sounds like we may have lost her. So,
No,
Steve-
I'm here. Sorry, I didn't realize I was still muted. So from my perspective, I guess we would prefer that you not extend the due date, but we certainly would be very supportive of waiving penalties and interests. So that way, people who are able to pay would be paying, on time, but anybody who was in a position where they didn't feel like they were able to pay wouldn't be penalized.
Yes, thank you. Yes, this did come up in calls with the business community, particularly because landlords who are the property tax payers are getting lots of requests from their tenants for them to be able to defer rent payments. And one of the ways to help them in that would be not for them to be able to forego penalties and interest in paying their own property taxes. So that's a position I would support as well. What about the rest of the board? Mr. Stephen, do you want to weigh in?
Sure, Mike. I agree with Lane and Carrie. I think I'd rather not mess with the deadlines. I think a lot of people have automated payments set up through escrow and things like that. And so I don't know that there's a compelling need. I will say that the town is continuing to provide services. So, I think it's not like we somehow just, people are paying their taxes and not getting the service in exchange for them. But I do think that in this crisis that we're in, some flexibility and some leniency on late fees and penalties for those who do have to pay, do have to physically pay their taxes is completely appropriate.
Jerry?
Yeah, I agree. And a couple of questions. How long are we allowed to waive the penalties and fees for?
I don't think the legislation that I saw, I don't think specified, did it, Stephen? I don't recall seeing that.
I don't recall seeing that, and there's two versions of it, and they're still working at it. And to be honest with you, I rarely fixate on those details because
Right.
they're liable to change.
Right.
But I do think, like I said, we've talked about it internally, and so if those proposals do come forward, we'll be making. You already know what our recommendation is going to be, and then I think the board can take swift action to let the community know that we're going to take one approach or the other.
We might be able to raise that question tomorrow.
Yeah, no, that's part of the plan. I was hoping that they would tell me that it had been approved. I don't know if they're voting, like I said, as we speak or not.
Well, I'm trying to get a sense of how it's going to work. So let's say I'm a business and I can't pay by May 1st. So, okay, the penalties are waived, the fees are waived. Do I have to pay by any date certain, or we don't know any of these details yet? Is that what you're saying?
No. And we're not even allowed to waive them now. As we sit here now, we're not even allowed to offer it.
Yeah.
Correct. Well, I definitely would be in favor of it for now. And I guess I'm interested in hearing from you. Is there some kind of time frame at which it would affect our finances? Like if it went on for 6 months, is that a big hardship? Or do you have any sense of this at all?
So I guess my thought was if there was any extension granted, that it would be until June 30th. And I did run some budget projections with that assumption. And I do think that there is a possibility, given that, and if there's any relief provided for meals tax, the local meals tax or rooms tax, that we may not quite meet our revenue estimates. But we traditionally come in with unexpended appropriation. So at this point, I'm not concerned that we would have any issue in closing the fiscal year in the black. But if we were talking about potentially providing an extension that went beyond this fiscal year, then I'd have to take another look at it. The town, we have an almost 100% property tax collection rate. And even if you go back to the last recession, the delinquency rate was very, very low. And, this came on fast, and it's devastating to a lot of businesses. So it does have a different impact. But I would expect that our collection rate is still going to remain very high.
Yeah, me too. Any other comments from the board? All right, well, we'll keep everybody posted as this legislation makes its way through, and hopefully at the next time we meet, we might have a bill that's passed and a formal proposal before us. Well, the next item on our agenda is a town meeting update. And I've asked the town moderator to join us. So Carmen?
Hello, everybody. I think most of you know that I did consult with the list of public safety and other town officials last week, pursuant to the protocol that we adopted recently about postponing or recessing and continuing town meeting in the event of emergencies. The feedback was unanimous and consistent that clearly we're going to have to recess and continue town meeting. The additional factors, we considered what the risk to voters is, what the feasibility of alternatives might be. None of them look really good at the moment. And it was suggested by others that we should also consider the availability of public safety personnel and also the availability of facilities. Mm-hmm. So the problem is that we have, under the statute, Chapter 39, Section 10A, the moderator has the ability in a public safety situation to delay a town meeting by 30 days, up to 30 days from the date of the declaration to recess and continue the meeting. And so what I thought I would do in order to give people some planning room and notice is to let them know now that I plan to postpone town meeting and that it will be for a date in May, and then to go ahead and issue that declaration the day before town meeting was actually scheduled to take place, and that would give us the maximum time that I could push the meeting out. Since that time, there's been a lot of conversation among moderators and town council about how to use the available provisions in state law in this unprecedented situation for all of our towns. And it came to my attention that Section 9, which is another section of the same Chapter 39, allows a select board to delay a town meeting date up to any date prior to June 3rd. Now, the conventional wisdom has always been that that provision of the law applies only before a warrant has actually been posted and the notice has gone out to citizens, voters, when the town meeting is going to happen. And that once the warrant was posted, the only mechanism for delaying the meeting would be by the moderator under Section 10A. But reading the language of Section 9, it doesn't really say that. And there are some folks who consider that actually you probably have two entities that have the authority to delay town meeting, one being the moderator in certain circumstances, but the other being the select board by a vote. So we've consulted with town council on this because it sure would be more orderly and sensible for all of our planning purposes if we could decide now town meeting is going to be for a date in June and get ourselves organized with a new town meeting calendar and all kinds of deadlines, finance committee hearings, et cetera, planning for June, rather than doing this big shuffle where we're planning it for May, but we're probably going to move it again. So we have to create a whole bunch of deadlines for a presumed date in May, and then we're going to move them all a second time. So the reply back came from town council that, well, there's a good argument that you could do that under Section 9, that the select board could take the vote, but there's no case law on it. No one's used it that way. And the reason for the conventional wisdom that the select board can't do that after the warrant is already posted is because there's concrete notice that's already gone out to the community at that point, and you can't be the warrant itself is the notice of the meeting, and so you can't be going around moving the meeting date. That would be fairly untenable as a matter of governance. So it's always been understood that it could only happen in kind of an acute emergency situation, and it could only happen by a declaration of the moderator. So his suggestion was that we do it both ways, that we could certainly have the select board take a vote to postpone town meeting to a date in June. And then just in case there's any question about the procedural regularity of that, I would go ahead and do the same two declarations of recess and continuance that I otherwise would have done, getting us to the same date for town meeting. And I would recommend to you that that's what we do. Stephen mentioned earlier the municipal relief legislation that's been pending for a while with respect to town meeting. And I understand that the House and the Senate were back in session again this afternoon, and they were hoping very much to have a version of the bill on the governor's desk by the end of the day today. That bill, however, at least in the language that I saw it most recently had, and who knows what's happened to it between now and the time it gets to the desk, it still leaves us in a situation in which we're supposed to have town meeting done by June 30th. And it allows us, however, to dip into free cash with the approval of the state for a 12th of our budget for the month of July, and presumably thereafter after that. But we're still in kind of a tough spot, and I don't know. I leave that to Carrie and Stephen and Lane, how functional that would be as a mechanism, or whether if we're in fact pushed out past June 30th, whether we should be thinking about some stopgap measures to have action on some of the articles, if not all. But looking at the calendar, if we were to select June 22nd, which is a Monday, as the date for reconvening annual town meeting or continuing annual town meeting with the same warrant that we've got out there, that would work out pretty well. It would give us a calendar where the Finance Committee has its remaining 2 hearings on May 4 and May 6. There's a couple of weeks. Finance Committee report would need to go to the printer on May 22nd, which leaves adequate time for FinCom to convene virtual or in-person, if we're lucky by then, meetings, and for the select board also to convene its meetings to come up with recommendations on all the articles and to get all of the work done that town staff needs to do in order to get the draft to the printer. It would have us with motions due on June 3rd, which would leave enough time for town staff, citizen petitioners, et cetera, to get re-engaged and get their motions together, and allow us to have a motions review meeting with town council on June 10th. And then our other meetings, the coordination meeting could happen on the 11th, moderator's staff meeting on the 12th, and then annual town meeting would begin on June 22nd, and we'd still have a little bit of fudge room in case there are still special provisions that we need to take for public health reasons in order to hold town meeting. So if we did that and the select board were to conclude that you want to take a vote and delay town meeting to June 22nd, we could publicize that, everybody would know, and then we would let folks know that the moderator will also be making a declaration to recess and continue the meeting twice. My first declaration would happen the day before town meeting is currently scheduled. I continue the meeting to May 25, which is a holiday, and it clearly would not happen that day. And then on May 24, I would continue the meeting to June 22nd, and we would get to the same place. And that would work within that 30-day window.
Yeah, when I was on the correspondence between town moderator and council and town manager about this, Carmen, I think one of the things I'd like to do, and I think there is authority, and you just laid it out, is if we could get this timeline written down and posted so that everybody could have a chance to look at everything, that would probably be helpful. I have a question though. You're not going to make your declaration until just before town meeting, April 24th or whatever date you've chosen. What are our requirements to actually conduct public hearings before town meeting?
So we have always done hearings before town meeting by tradition and practice. To the best of my knowledge, we do not have a bylaw. There's certainly no requirement under state law. There are most towns do not have hearings before town meeting. So there isn't actually a requirement to have those hearings except by tradition and practice. The Finance Committee typically relies on those hearings and the public comment that comes during those hearings in formulating its recommendations on the articles on the warrant. And the moderator, I rely on those hearings in coming up with what will be the composition of the consent calendar at town meeting.
Is there any provision for streamlining the warrant?
So one more thing about the hearings. You know, since the Finance Committee hearings are not hearings in the sense of statutory hearings before the Zoning Board of Appeals or the Natural Resources Commission or the Select Board for licenses, there isn't a formal rubric that the Finance Committee necessarily has to follow to do their hearings. And there's nothing that says they absolutely have to take public comment or that they have to take it in person. They certainly could do a Zoom meeting and take questions by email. There'd be nothing wrong with a process like that. That would be entirely appropriate. Mike, to your question about whether there's any way to streamline the warrant, no. The warrant is the warrant once it's there. And I think the only mechanism to cherry pick items that you wish to do in an abbreviated session with some protective measures for public health would be to call a special town meeting and to take a short list of the articles currently on the warrant that are in the judgment of the administrators of the town critical budget or other items. It would not include citizen petitions. It would not include the zoning articles, for example. None of those have a particular urgency. So it would be really the budgetary issues that put us in a pickle after June 30th that you might want to look at. There's even an argument that you could delay capital articles and deal with those whenever you can have a full meeting. But it's certainly open to the town to do that. And I can tell you that there are some towns, most recently in, I'm going to forget the name of the town now, Sheffield, I think.
Sherburne,
Say it again.
it's an SH town.
Yeah, I think it's Sheffield.
Sheffield.
So it's a smaller town than ours, 6,000 registered voters as opposed to 13,000. They had a special town meeting that was called during the month of March, called for a date during the month of March. It was time sensitive because it was an appropriation for a treatment of a lake that needed to happen within a particular seasonal window. And if it didn't happen, it was going to have to wait a whole nother year. And it was viewed as quite urgent by many people within the town. So they held that special town meeting in the parking lot of their regional high school with all of the voters standing 6 feet apart.
Wow.
And there are others that are looking at conducting their town meetings in a way that protects public health like that. Whole lot easier to have a meeting outside if it's June. These people did it in their winter coats. But it's a whole lot easier to have a meeting outside. You could easily see a meeting on the football field. It's already marked with lines. You could put cones out. People could stand at cones. And one could be creative about check-in procedures to protect both town staff as well as voters in that process. And you could use paper voting slips, or voice voting has never been favored in Concord, because it has real shortcomings in terms of its accuracy. The people in the front or the louder voices may be easier for the moderator to hear than the people in the back or the softer voices. But in this kind of a circumstance, one could see an exception to that general rule. And if you were looking at our budget items for as long as I can remember have been almost without controversy, almost without question. So I can remember many years of the town budget passing without a question or a comment. And in this year, I know that our school budgets are within the Finance Committee guidelines, and I expect that they would be uncontroversial as well. So that's just something to think about.
I want to go, if I can go back to my question about streamlining. Some of the articles on the warrant are articles that the select board sponsored. Can we not move them?
Sure, but once they're on the warrant, anybody who wishes to move them may do so.
No, I
So you
understand
can't
that.
count on that as a streamlining tool.
But we could also approach petitioners about holding off on their motions until maybe the fall when we have a special town meeting.
You certainly could, and as long as every participant in town meeting cooperated, you'd be all set. But if there's anybody who moves and makes a second, now you've got to debate the article.
I understand. Terry, you had a question?
Yeah, I think that the consent calendar is another really good way of streamlining also, although always object and take it off if they want. But Carmen, I think your proposal is really good, that it covers us legally and it gives everybody a chance to do the planning. And my question is, you went through a lot of dates on the calendar. Some of those dates, like the FinCom hearings, it seems like could possibly be done on a Zoom basis. Which of those things, like out of all the dates you mentioned, which are the earliest dates that have to be done in person? Like you mentioned all these different meetings. And I'm thinking like the first one was May 4th. We might still be in a Zoom environment then, but what's the earliest date on that calendar that would require an in-person meeting, do you think?
So, Terry, honestly, everything could be done on Zoom until June 22nd. We can't do the town meeting on Zoom, but everything else could be done on Zoom.
Great.
Exactly. I also invited the town clerk to join us tonight because I wanted to check with her on dates to make sure we hadn't overlooked something. So, Carrie, are you still with us?
Yes, I think that June 22nd would work, and it's after the election, which is scheduled now for June 11th. So that makes the effective date of office not a sticky issue.
So the effective date of office would be,
After the conclusion of town meeting, which would be happening after town election. Whereas before we were looking at potentially before or after the town election.
are there other comments?
Other than to say that for you, Mike, I think in the soccer world, they call that injury time at the end of the game.
Yeah, right. Thank you. So I think what we would do is, I think it'd be a good idea if we could get this plan written down in a way that we could all see it, and then have it as an agenda item at the next time we meet. Now, we do have a meeting. Let me ask, are there other comments that the board wants to make about this plan and proposal?
Well, I would like to see if we can even vote it now. Unless we're going to meet in the next couple of days, because it sounds like where we're going anyway. I'm ready to vote. I don't know, maybe my colleagues are not ready to vote.
I could just ask a question. Sorry, Mike. Just about the school. I know you've been corresponding with Dr. Hunter. I don't think anyone can commit, one way or the other, what the school schedule is going to look like. If when they come back. So that's the only variable that I don't think we discussed quite a bit. But I don't think that should impede a vote. If it needs to be changed again, it could be changed again.
Well, I had a very brief conversation with the superintendent quite a while ago, and in anticipation that we would be doing this, and her response was that she'd make any date work for us if we needed to do that. But I don't have any reluctance to taking a vote. I just think it would be in all of our interest to have, exactly this process written down. We do have a meeting scheduled for Monday, which I was going to propose that we cancel, only to sort of have our next select board meeting when and if this legislation gets passed. And perhaps then we could get this, it would be, sometime next week. If they're working on it today, it's going to be done in the next couple of days. So if we scheduled a meeting in late week next week, we might be able to take both the town meeting issue and the property tax issue up at the same time. So if there's no real objection, I would propose that, Carmen, perhaps you and I could work on writing down this proposal, laying out all of the dates. I know you've been in communication with the chair of the finance committee, and I know he's being cooperative and helpful getting these things scheduled. Would that be all right with you if we work together on that?
It's fine with me. I have, let's see, here's my schedule. You probably can't see that.
Yes, we can.
Yeah, that's fine. I think if we can get a preamble before that, based on chapter so-and-so and so-and-so, the town moderator intends to do this. And based on section 9 of the same chapter, the select board moves to blah, blah, blah.
Perfect. Yeah, I'm happy to write that up, and we can run it by Mina to make sure that he feels comfortable. We've dotted all necessary I's and crossed all necessary T's. I can do that.
I guess particularly because, as you said, there's no case law for this, and there really isn't a lot of precedent for it. I would rather have it a little bit more buttoned up than maybe we might need to under other circumstances. So unless there's real objection, Carmen, you and I can get that done, and we'll get it posted and provided to the select board for our next meeting.
Okay. All right. And then I think in the meantime, I'd like to let Dean Banfield know that I already told him to just kind of hold the phone on looking at additional scheduling for the remaining Finance Committee hearings. But I'd like to let them know that we're looking at a date in June, and hopeful that we'll hit our peak in April and be out of the woods in June.
That would be great. Any other comments? All right. That is essentially the end of our formal agenda. I just want to say that also at our next meeting, as a consequence of one of the business meetings that Stephen and I were on, there was a suggestion, a good suggestion, I think, to modify the charge of the Economic Vitality Committee, and to modify that charge so that the committee would be responsible for coming up for suggestions for how the town and the community could assist small businesses in town during this emergency. So I did have a chance to speak with Susan about this earlier today. She's the liaison to that committee. And I think we were in agreement. So I would add that to our next meeting too, to get our Economic Vitality Committee sort of back in session to see if there are things the town could do to support small businesses. Susan, do you have any comment on that before I ask Stephen? I saw your hand.
No, I don't. I just to say I fully support that because I think the committee is very willing and able to take on that role.
Right, Stephen?
Yeah, just two quick comments, Mike. One is the list of essential businesses that are open is on our website. So people should check that out because there are plenty of businesses that are open and you can support them locally through takeout or groceries or whatever needs you may have. And I think that the more we can continue to support them to the best of our ability, the easier the bounce back will be. The other thing we did post on the website a more formalized version of the temporary policy for board and committee meetings. And I know I had sent that to the board, but I wanted other people who may be watching to know that that's out there. I do think that as we get through this and deeper, we may have the ability to allow more boards and committees to meet, but right now we're still, the current status is executive and regulatory only, other than with permission from the board or the moderator or me. I think we're trying to limit the use of our Zoom resources as we get to understand what the resources are, and we want to be respectful of MMN's availability. And so if it's not really a needed thing, we're declining to have the meeting. We know that there are committees who want to meet and talk about, budget items or enterprise funds and things like that. But in this situation, that work has to be suspended. And the reason I bring it up is because the Economic Vitality Committee is a meeting that we will have, but it's specifically geared towards trying to find ways to address the current situation for businesses. Similarly, the Hugh Cargill Committee is getting together to talk about ways that fund can be used in this crisis moment. So I just want people who are on other boards and committees, I don't want them to think that we're not being consistent or not taking the need for people to want to meet and talk even virtually as unimportant. We know it's important, but we just have to be a little restrictive right now, but I think that too will pass.
Right. Terry?
Yeah, I think that brings up one other point, which is as we get closer to town meeting, you're right, there are various boards and committees that are going to want to take position on articles. And hopefully we'll be able to have them do Zoom meetings by May or whatever.
Yeah, I'm working with the Finance Committee on setting, we haven't done really a true public hearing virtually yet. And so we're and we're learning a lot. Like everybody else, we're learning a lot about Zoom and how to do Zoom and how to not do Zoom. But I've been in direct communication with Dean as well, and we will find a way to set that up where people can kind of submit questions. It's more like a webinar than a meeting like this. But we need to upgrade to get to that, but we are working on it.
Right, but not only the finance committee, but I think in general, there are usually quite a few warrant articles where various boards and committees discuss it and take a formal position before we get to the.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the things that some of those may have to give, quite honestly, if we don't have the capacity to, have all of those meetings. Or they may just meet, I don't know, we'll have to figure that out as we go.
Yeah. Are there any other comments?
So the only other comment I would make, and Mike, this is directed at you, apropos the new temporary guidelines for meetings, we did receive some miscellaneous correspondence
Yes,
that we want to, okay, you're probably,
I do. I got one piece of correspondence from Ms. Heyer commenting on our agenda items. She was opposed to the suspension of single-service water bottle ban. She encouraged us to be equitable in property tax relief. She expressed her concerns about wireless radiation safety. So I appreciate her corresponding with us, and I'll make sure copies of this are available to each of you if you didn't receive it. If there's no other business, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Before I ask for a vote, thank all of our guests for coming with us tonight and providing us with their input. Greatly appreciated. All those in favor?
Aye.
I
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting is adjourned. Thank you all very much.